Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to start with a very interesting poem, a very heart touching poem, you can say. And the name of the poem is Hunger. Hunger has been written by Jayanta Mahapatra. So, I guess that you people might have heard the name Jayant Mahapatra before. You might have heard it at any point in your life. Maybe, he's heard his name. Maybe you've read his some poem, his some short story, because he has been a very great writer. He's been one of the most prominent and highly influential writers in Indian English, writing. So, he was the one who also received Sahitya Academy Award, which is one of the greatest awards in itself in literature. So when I speak about Jayant Mahapatra, it's very important to speak about his lifetime, about his achievements, about his academics and everything. So we'll just quicken it up, so that we can just start up with our poem too. But before we start with the poem, we need to discuss a little about Jayant Mahapatra, and this is going to be a homework too, that you need to find out more about his his life, his personal life too. You should be aware about the personal life of the author too, so that you can connect more with his poetry, you can connect more with his writing. So that is going to be a homework too. So Jayant Mahapatra, as I said, was a very important writer, and he's very recently died. He was born in 1928, and he died in 2023 itself, 27th August 2023. So he's lived almost for 95 years of age lifespan. So he was born in Cuttack, Odisha. And Odisha, as you see, is in itself a state, which is somehow poverty stricken. So you'd find majority of the population over there, which is, which is exploited, which is poor in the sense that they do not even have their ends meet. So in that sense, if we speak about him and his family, then he was born in an Odia Christian family. And he himself describes that he has had a hard childhood, and he used to find it hard to live, and used to somehow escape the times. And at one point in time he also mentions that Hunger is the poem that has come out of his own experiences. So he might have he has had some kinds of experiences around him, because he speaks about the poverty, about the exploitation, about the naked reality in the surroundings that he sees. So when he sees all these things around him, he tries to picture them. So his vivid kind of imagery is something that comes out of his own experiences, that comes out of his own his own how he tends to see the world. That is something that has been pictured by him in his poetry. So that is the reason why he is also known as the poet of the local, because his poetry is more or less, it is related to different kinds of themes which are very common, because he speaks about the common man, he speaks about their problem, he speaks about their plight, their pain, their misery, and he speaks about loneliness, he speaks about history, time, love. And all these kinds of basic themes are the major parts of his writing. So that's the reason why Jayant Mahapatra forms a very, very important space in the field of Indian writings in English, along with other major prominent writers like A.K. Ramanujan and R. Parthasarathi. They all form a trio where they kind of they are the writers who have been very influential in laying the foundation of Indian English poetry. So Jayant Mahapatra, I guess, if we speak about his major or notable works, then our relationship, his poetry relationship, his poetry collection Reign of Rights. Hunger in itself is a poem which is part of his poetry collection Reign of Rights, which was written in 1975. So Hunger is part of that particular poetry collection, and he is the one of the greatest writers who has also received Sahitya Academy Award. He was one of the first Indian English writer who received Sahitya Academy Award for Indian English poetry. So in that sense, he received it in 1981, Sahitya Academy Award, for this particular poetry collection relationship, and it was written in 1980, but he received the award in 1981. So there are other major works, the plethora of writings. He's also written number of short stories, vast number of writings. But Jayant Mahapatra has also been somebody who was into sciences. So in that sense, he has been a teacher in the subject of physics. So before he was a writer, he was a teacher in the physics. So all those experiences of physics are also somewhere amalgamated in his writings here in literature too. So he started writing much later in his life, 1980s. So from 1975 to 2023 is the time span which he was active in literature. He started writing, he started bringing out something that was in his head. So when we speak about all this, so this was a minimum briefing about Jayant Mahapatra. Before we were speaking about the poem. Now I think you could somehow connect with the poem and the poet. So Jayant Mahapatra has written this poem, Hunger. Now if I ask you people, when you hear this word hunger, what is it that comes to your head in the first place? I guess it would be the hunger that you might be feeling. You might feel that I'm very hungry at this point in time. I need chole bhature, I need ice cream or anything. You might be hungry for any kind of food. So hunger is that kind of hunger you might be feeling. So you won't be thinking about the other metaphorical or other connotations which are attached to this particular word, hunger. So hunger here signifies two different kinds of hungers, two types of hungers, Jayant Mahapatra is speaking about. So the first kind of hunger is normal hunger, which is physical hunger, the hunger of our stomach. We tend to, gratify our, gratify or satisfy our hunger by eating something, eating food. So that is the one kind of hunger when we are starving for food. Another kind of hunger is the sexual hunger, the hunger for flesh. So these both hungers are somewhere, very, very intimately connected in the poem. And this is how it has been represented by, Jayant Mahapatra also. As I said before also, that Jayant Mahapatra is somebody who is the poet of the local, who would be speaking about the problems, the plight, the pain, the misery of the poor people. So here also in this particular poem, he would be speaking about, why is this poem very heart-touching? This is because when you will read this poem, you will feel like, the tears would be shedding down through your eyes, I feel. This is because, this is very, very intense, very profound kind of poem. Because this is speaking about, the helplessness of the poor people. How they are marginalized up to an extent where they are left with no other option than to succumb in front of the situation, than to completely surrender themselves in front of the situation that has somehow led them to do what they do not want to do. So in that sense, if I speak about, if I move further with the poem and I discuss what is right inside in the poem. So before that, I would read the first paragraph of the poem so that you can have a little idea about what I'm exactly explaining. So it was hard to believe the flesh was heavy on my back. The fisherman said, "Will you have her?" carelessly, trailing his nets and his nerves as though his words sanctified the purpose with which he faced himself. I saw his white-born thrash's eyes. So, in this poem, you would find three different characters. One is the narrator who is narrating the whole incident. Another is the fisherman with whom he encounters and he has a conversation with him. And the third one is the daughter of the fisherman about whom the conversation would be further. So she would be someone who would be introduced to us in the poem in the last stanza of the poem. So the first stanza in itself shows or introduces us or opens the whole scene where we would be understanding that the poem is all about. What is the poem all about is something that we would realize in the very first line itself, because the first line would show that it is speaking about flesh. The word flesh is the word which is being repeated again and again. The repetition of the words like flesh, skin, you would continuously find, constantly there would be these repetitions in the poem. And this kind of shows the consciousness of the narrator, who is very much conscious about his own hunger of the flesh. So you would find in the first line, it was hard to believe the flesh was heavy on my back. Now who is my back, here, who is my here? So the narrator is narrating the incident. So narrator it's the back of the narrator. He says that I feel that my back is very heavy. It's because I feel that the flesh that I am hungry for is something that is becoming heavy for myself. Now the narrator is hungry for the flesh. The narrator has sexual urges. The narrator is full of lust. The narrator wants to satisfy or gratify his sexual hunger by, satiating his or quenching his thirst by having the daughter of the fisherman. So, at the very first line here, it shows the conflict that is constantly going on in the head of the narrator. Because, there is this duality of opinion, duality of thought. This is very common in human beings. Because at one point in time, we would think that this is the good, this is the evil. So there are always binaries, or there are always the dual sides of the things that we tend to ponder about. So in that sense, if I say that, I would like to do this, but then I would not want to do this. So these are the dualities. And narrator is also stuck with those dualities, where he is at one point in time feeling that he has this sexual urge to have the daughter of the fisherman. But at the other side, he also feels that this is something heinous. I mean, how can I be, exploiting somebody's situation, exploiting somebody's circumstances? They are helpless at this point in time. This is something, I would be a part of sin. I would be committing a sin in that sense. So he is very much aware about all these things. So even then, sexual urge is something that would, even if it is uninviting, you would still feel invited, as in you cannot control those urges. So a narrator is one of those. And you could find that the fisherman here says, the fisherman said, will you have her carelessly? The narrator is saying carelessly word is very important here, because the narrator is narrating the story, so it's easy for him to say that the fisherman is saying all this carelessly. But at the same time, it's not easy for a father to offer his daughter, to throw his daughter into this kind of profession of prostitution, and it's because, they want to make their ends, that is they have to satisfy, or they have to fill their stomachs, in order to have the starvation killed. They have to do all these things because they are somehow. So we cannot blame the fisherman here, because he is himself a victim of some larger force, and he and his daughter along with that, both of them are victims of the system, or they are the victims of the economic injustice, or the social injustice that they have to face in the society, because the haves are constantly exploiting the have-nots, the rights, the marginalized, they nobody speaks about them, their rights. And this is the beauty of the poet, that he would be bringing about their plight right in front, and the horrific reality that they have to face is something that he would be picturing and bringing it in front of us, so that we could realize that at times how hard it is to live, or to kind of experience the writings which have been written by such kinds of writers. And so in that sense, if I say that the fisherman, when he says that will you have her, his own daughter, it's not easy for a father to say, but he is somehow helpless. And up to what extent is it okay that if you are hungry, then is it okay to offer your daughter? But he's doing it for himself and his daughter. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's in that sense, you people have to realize, or you people have to ponder upon it, cogitate, very thoroughly, as to what extent is it okay for the poor to sell off their daughters, at some minimum price. And this is the worst reality of India. You would still find, the people in Bihar, the people in Orissa and all, they would sell off their daughters for 50,000, for maybe even 40,000, 60,000, not even 1 lakh. They would sell off their daughters. and they would be married to someone, and in return they would be getting the money, and then after that they wouldn't be having any kind of connection with their daughter. So all this is reality. This is something that even I have seen in my own village. So all these things, they kind of make us feel very dejected at times. We kind of feel very horrified at these kinds of scenes. And when the fisherman here says that, will you have my daughter, will you, she's just 15 and you can have her, trailing his net. So he is he's around the sea and he's trying to trail his nets. And nets here, the word net here, it has metaphorical meanings here. Net here is not just the net to catch the fish. Net here is a kind of a bait. It is a kind of a trap that he is laying in order to lure the attention, or in order to attract the visitors, or in order to attract the customers for his daughter. So sanctify the purpose with which he faced himself. I saw his white-born thresh's eyes. So now he is speaking about, he's personifying the hunger of the hunger of the fisherman, because when he says white-born thresh's eyes, so he could see through his eyes that there is this lack of charm, there's this lack of energy, there's this lack of vigor in his eyes. And white bone, you could see through his bones, you could see that how thin, how lean he is. So the malnourished, so he's very malnourished, and he has no sort of nutrition, leave alone nutrition, he just even do not have something to eat for himself, so starving for hunger. I followed him across the sprawling sands, my mind thumping in the flesh's sling. And then when we move on to the next stanza, we find that the fisherman has offered his daughter, and he says that you need to follow me to my daughter. I would take you to him, to her, and then you can maybe satisfy or gratify your urge, your sexual urge, and then in return you could give us some money or food to eat. So in that sense, you might be feeling that, what is this happening in the story? Is it even possible for a father to offer his daughter? That's true. That's these morbid images in this poem tend to make us more sympathetic, not sympathetic, but empathetic towards these people, these poor people, these people who have been exploited so far, these other side of the row, they have been marginalized so far. And when we speak about this marginalization, it's just here the daughter is doubly marginalized, because on the one hand she is suffering the same pangs of hunger which her father suffers, and on the other side she has to go through the trauma of having a non-wanted sexual intercourse with someone day after day. So that kind of exploitation of a girl, of a daughter who's just 15 years is something that tends to make me feel very gloomy at times. So I followed him across the sprawling sands, my mind thumping in the flesh's sling. Hope lay perhaps in burning the house I lived in. So again, throughout the poem you would find there is this conflict in his mind. Throughout the poem you would find, through these lines, you would find that the author is, or the narrator, is stuck between his own desires. He himself is aware that his desires are not up to the mark. These desires are not something that would be forgiven by the Almighty, because just for his own desires he is trying to exploit the current poverty of someone else. So hope lays perhaps in burning the house I lived in. So in order to counter those sins which he is going to commit, what can he do? He needs to burn the house that he lived in. Because why would he burn the house that he lives in? Is because he is going to disrupt the peace of somebody else's house. He's going to disrupt the entire foundation of somebody else's house. So in that sense, he could only attain, some kind of or he could only counter the sins that he commit by burning his own house, by burning all the things that he possessed. Silence gripped my sleeves, his body clawed at the froth, his old nets had only dragged up from the seas. Then he says that this fisherman has today got nothing. When he was laying the trap, when he was laying the net, he could not find even a single fish. So in that sense, here the clawed at the froth, this froth is just the foam. So he is just bringing that foam in that net. There is no fish, there's only foam. So he's left with no other option than to offer his own daughter. So he is completely surrendering himself and his daughter in front of this narrator, so that he can have something at the end of the day to eat, or to fulfill his to fulfill his hunger in the end. So next paragraph, we move on to the next paragraph. Then the narrator has finally reached to the hut, or reached to the hut of the fisherman. In the flickering dark, his hut opened like a wound. Now he says his hut opened like a wound. How is it opened like a wound? And why the hut has been compared to a wound? Because when he enters, there's this flickering light in the hut, and that particular light is somehow showing the blood-filled wound of the house. Because house is something which kinds of, it tries to provide you with the warmth, it tries to provide you with comfort, and it is the means of, peace, harmony, everything, protection. It is meant to protect you. But this house, this hut itself has become a place for, both the daughter and the father, a place which has exposed them to these injuries, where the daughter is being constantly exploited for the sexual urges of someone. So this is the reason the narrator compares the house with the wound. The wind was high, and the days and nights before, palm fronds scratched my skin. I inside the shack and oil lamps played the hours bunched to those walls. Over and over, the sticky soot crossed the space of my mind. So you see how time is something which is constantly flowing. Normally we associate time with some, with the constant passage of time. So time doesn't stop for anybody. But in this house, in this hut, we tend to see as if time has stopped for the father, it has stopped for the daughter, and not just for the father and the daughter, it has stopped for the visitors too. Because in this house you would find the oil lamp, the sticky soot, it is sticking the time on the walls of the hut. So you find that this hut has, there is nothing that is changing for the daughter. Every day she has to go through the same trauma, every day she has to go through the same thing. So time is becoming constant for these, both the father and the daughter, because the time is not changing for them. They were facing the poverty earlier, and they are facing the poverty now, and they are, it seems as it is endless. It is not ephemeral, but it is constant. So it will be staying forever. So I heard him say, my daughter, she's just turned 15, feel her, I'll be back soon. Your bus leaves at 9. So now the father says, you can feel my daughter, you can have her, she is all yours, and your bus would leave at 9, and I would return back, and I'll take you back after that. And he says that the sky fell on me. When he says these words to me, the entire sky has fallen on me. And a father's exhausted while, how helpless this father might be is something that is coming into my head constantly. Long and lean, her ears were cold as rubber. So her body and her soul both have become so cold. Both have become so, though she is 15, but she is lacking that vigor, she's lacking that energy, she's lacking that charm, that youth, liveliness in her, is because she has been constantly sexually harassed, and she is malnourished, she doesn't have anything to eat. So all these factors have led her to become someone who is not very inviting. But even then the narrator could not stop himself, or could not resist himself from being invited to her. So she opened her wormy legs wide. She has been diminished to a creature like worm, because she, nobody is speaking about the rights of the daughter, nobody is speaking about the choice of the daughter, that what exactly she wants, about her consent, about what she wants. I think she just wants to have food, that's it, just like her father. That's all, because she knows that if in exchange of her body, if she would not, in exchange of her body, if she gets food, then it's okay, because there is no other option left with her. So she opened her mommy legs wide. So the girl here behaves like a machine, as if she has been trained, as if this is something that has been very regularly been happening to her, day after day or night after night. She has to do the same process. So it's very mechanical in that sense, that she, without even asking for it, she looks at him and then she opens her legs wide. I felt the hunger there. When she opened her legs, then I felt hungers there. So the hunger of the daughter and the father was quite very much different from the hunger of the narrator. Narrator is hungry for his sexual urge, his sexual, the sexual hunger, and the daughter is hungry from her stomach. The father is hungry from his stomach. So their kind of hunger is very different from the hunger of the narrator, and one hunger here is leading to the hunger of the other. So the hunger of the father has led to the hunger of the narrator, because he could lay a trap for him, because the narrator was already hungry for something, and in order to satiate his hunger, he has to have or exploit the hunger of someone. So this was all. This was a kind of brief summary, or you can say we will analyze the poem later on. All the themes, all the symbols that have been used in the poem, and the rhyme scheme and everything, literary devices that have been used in this poem, like metaphors and repetitions and everything. All those things are going to be, we are going to discuss that in another lecture. So I hope that I have made the poem clear to you all up to a great extent, and if you have any problems, any doubts, then of course we can discuss that in the next lecture. We will be having a doubt session too regarding this. So that was all for the day, so I would call it a day now, and I hope that you people might be reading this poem at home, isn't it? Because I hope that you have liked the poem too. You might have gone through the the pains of the daughter, the pains of the the father. So this was the reason why I was saying that the poem is very heart touching. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.